Come to think of it, the first character from Genshin Impact I've ever heard of was Albedo, because one of my closest friends was and still is an Albedo main. So obviously I'd had a good impression of him from the get-go, because I trust my friend's taste and he seemed smart, introspective, and gentle, which really appealed to me. That's why when I started playing the game, he was the character I told people I really wanted to acquire, so you could imagine my disappointment when I found out that not all the 5-star characters were available at once, and you'd only have around 3 weeks to get them. I was very slow to progress through the game, so when I found out about that, I kept hoping that Albedo's rerun wouldn't come at a time when I didn't have enough primos yet. Actually, Kokomi was my first 5-star because I pulled due to fear of corrosion, but soon after I was worried about having won the 50-50 because rumors were going around that there would be an Albedo rerun in the patch after next, so if I were to get him, I'd have to win the 50-50. Believe me, I was so anxious about it that my mom almost offered to spend to help me get him, just to shut me up because I was expressing my woes around thrice a week. Luckily, I got him within my first 10 pull, and I am so grateful to have him now, and of course he's double crowned as he deserves, and he also has his special weapon with lore that's closely tied to him. However, the Husk art he said is really being mean to me, so that's quite unfortunate. Point is, he means a lot to me and he remains to be one of my most prized acquisitions in the game, so it's only right that I try to pick apart his character as best as I can. However, this time I'll try to analyze his traits by comparing them to his solar isotoma, which is the core of his gameplay. Basically, since it's a flower made of geo, I will be looking at Albedo's characteristics, which can be metaphorically resembled by minerals since geo encompasses the earth and rocks, which are composed of various minerals, and I'll also be examining aspects of his personality which would call to mind the image of a flower. So let's get into it. As we know, Albedo is a practitioner of alchemy, which is commonly used for the purpose of converting or transmuting different substances, especially from some inferior element to something like gold. He himself is also a homunculus made of chalk, which is essentially soft white limestone, meaning that minerals compose his origins. From that alone, the reason for his vision being geo is quite clear. But beyond that, his firm, ambitious, and precise approach to science also supports his being a geo-wielder. The act of uncovering in and of itself is something that can be closely linked with minerals, as lots of the more refined ores can be found in the depths of the earth. As such, Albedo's main goal as a scientist is to dig deep for valuable pieces of knowledge, not settling for ignorance, complacency, and mundanity. Of course, it is something that has been imposed on him by his creator, but with the way he keeps referencing his desire to realize the truths of the world, it starts to take on some sort of existential meaning to him. It seems like the truth is something he holds in the highest regard because it really is the basis of all things and is deserving of much respect. Thus, he possesses the persistence of a rock when it comes to discovering more about the nature of Teyvat as a scientist, and his goals regarding this are quite clear. However, this does not mean that he's hard-headed and narrow-minded as a scientist, as some people might think, because his attitude to discovery takes on a more mystical approach, since his desire to understand the nature of the world is his key to uncovering a sense of meaning in life. So while rationality is a key characteristic of his, it doesn't seem to be something harsh and imposing. In fact, his mind, which is as sharp as the crystalline shapes of minerals, is something that's greatly valued in Mondstadt society, and it allows him to serve both the knights and just anyone who needs his advice. This makes him good at investigating and explaining things, especially in the major events where his character is featured, because he's often shown to be the main problem solver or investigator, as evidenced by his title within the Knights. It's the reason why he was able to uncover the phenomenon regarding the mutated whopper flower, and it also benefited him when it came to uncovering even social phenomena like Shinchio's handwriting insecurity in the Irodori festival. This characterizes him as more of a refined precious gem rather than something coarse and harsh like huge rough aggregates of rock. However, minerals can also often easily be tainted by other impurities, and this is something that I believe Albedo has to reckon with. Although his approach to science has been quite respectful so far, the art of chemia is known to be something dangerous and I guess heretic. Even he is able to acknowledge its dangers, especially the threat of being overtaken by it. I think his character is a very interesting exploration of the risks posed by manipulating nature and how not all kinds of unethical scientific practices stem from ill will. Compared to characters like Rinnedotir or Dottore, or the others who seem to have a sense of power hungriness in their pursuit of knowledge and innovation, at least according to my reading of them, Albedo doesn't seem to possess those qualities, at least not very strongly, but that doesn't guarantee that he won't be at risk of going down that path. I personally still do have a strong belief in Albedo's ethics and sense of responsibility since he expresses concern for the people around him and in Mondstadt. But I think that he would still struggle finding that boundary between productive and destructive science before settling on the right path. It's interesting to think about why Albedo has a geovision instead of a dendrovision, considering his aspirations are to discover the nature of life and create life itself, and dendro pertains to plants, so being able to manipulate it would be akin to manipulating life in a sense. Then he could be using his vision to create real flowers instead of imitations made of rock. But I don't think this is necessarily a loss for him, because Earth is something from which life springs from, and being affiliated with it might be better for him to feel closer to the source of all things, if that makes sense. Rocks predate lots of flora and fauna, and they contain lots of information and wisdom from generations past, and I think having him be able to resonate with that will be satisfying to him, even if he didn't feel as though gaining a vision even impacted his life that much. So while his geovision could be interpreted as an analogy of his artifice, from his artificially created existence to the things he himself creates artificially, I believe it more strongly highlights the depth and density of understanding to which he aspires, as well as the strength and fortitude of his will as a scientist. Although Albedo isn't exactly a pure softie because, as I said, he's also extremely rational and ambitious, that doesn't completely negate his soft side, and in fact, I think they complement each other quite well. After all, minerals aren't always tough, as evidenced by the likes of chalk, which Albedo is the prince of apparently. However, I'm going to instead liken him to a flower, because aside from being soft and delicate, it's also very vibrant and pretty, just like his personality, and even appearance, because wow, look at that magnificent ethereal glance. Anyway, he's not someone who's outwardly sweet and kind in a mushy way, because he's quite introverted and closed off. Still, his flowery qualities are evident in his artistry and his care for the people around him. I'm really glad about the fact that Albedo was characterized as an artist, because this provides him with another sense of fulfillment which cannot always be achieved through scientific research, and it also adds some color to his personality. Not to say that he would have been bland if he weren't an artist, but since he's confirmed to be a homunculus and therefore not technically fully human, there would have been a possibility that he'd come across as robotic and one-note. Fortunately, the Albedo we have right now is very wholesome and adorable, especially when he speaks of the necessity of inspiration in art. During the Irodori festival, I was sort of, rolling my eyes at the fact that he said he could draw pretty easily and quickly because art is something that needs lots of time and effort. Yet I sort of came to appreciate it upon realizing that this is a sign that he's able to abandon his harsh technical constraints and just go with the flow for something. Like he's able to have more access to his intuitions and instincts aside from pure logic. His voice line about how he draws Kaya with just 3 strokes is something that shows how he is in touch with his mood and how art is not something completely calculated for him, or else he'd draw Kaya perfectly realistic every time. Just a side note, I do think this is a diss, but as someone who imagines them to be in a close and comfortable relationship, I think this voice line could also point to Albedo allowing himself to be more sassy, irreverent, and not so perfect around Kaya. On one hand, I think his being an artist could positively impact his personality in that it makes him more well-rounded and sensitive. But on the other hand, I do strongly believe that the mere fact that he's an artist is very much a sign that he is already a sensitive soul and it goes hand in hand with the similar kind of ingenuity he possesses when it comes to science. It's interesting how his approach to art and his high regard for it is something that directly contrasts the Sumero academia shunning art because they perceive it to be frivolous. I think Albedo is able to better develop his character alongside his scientific rigor through sketching, and I think it could lead him to attain wisdom and broaden his worldview beyond what cold hard facts might provide him, allowing him to feel alongside thinking without segregating the two. Aside from being sensitive in his approach to creating art, Albedo is also sensitive to the feelings of others, even if he might approach it from a more distanced and cognitive perspective. He's able to be patient with Klee because I think he understands her sense of fun, and he can offer to help people easily because he cares for them. I think he's also able to draw for Xingqiu's book quite well because of how he understands his authorial intent to some degree. This is very clear in the Irodori festival, where he's able to bring all these characters from various walks of life together to assist them in their struggles, from Xingqiu's insecurities to Kazuha uncovering some of his family's past. But even when it comes to entities that are quite difficult to empathize with, Albedo is still able to do so with the reject homunculus created by Rinudaughter, since he even expressed that he'd feel the same way if that were him. Even if he doesn't like interacting with people because of his strong introversion, it doesn't prevent him from understanding and relating with them, as long as he isn't burdened by too many shallow social responsibilities that are difficult to keep track of, such as arbitrary standards of etiquette. All in all, I think his gentle, flower-like sensitivity will stand him in good stead as he tries to fulfill his goal of understanding the world around him. Since the world is majestic and vast, so his strong sensitivity will definitely aid him in approaching it with both awe and introspection. Now that that's out of the way, I'd like to add some additional thoughts I have about our sweet little homunculus. The thing about Albedo eating spiders is adorable. No, I will not be taking any criticisms. I will offer him all the high-quality spiders I can find. His official art pose makes him look like a magical girl. I don't know how to explain that properly, but it's the vibes. I love how he's caring enough to ensure that other people don't get harmed by his experiments, but like Lisa, he's also kinda nonchalant about feeding us potions. Of course, realistically, we're going to need consent forms here, but I do appreciate characters who aren't too overprotective. I don't know, it's just me. I really don't have an opinion on Varka yet, but I do agree with Albedo's comment about him wanting Jean to just be the real Grandmaster already, because I really love Jean, and also, that's quite sassy of him, I like it. Honestly, I don't often notice his shoulder rolls and wrist rolls, because I usually quick swap right after deploying his skill or burst, but it's actually quite cool. It's like giving a very, ever so slightly cocky vibe, even though he's not actually cocky, you know. So yes, those are all the reasons why Albedo is an amazing human being. Well, human being quote unquote. And that's why I hope that the Husk artifact set really treats him well, because it's been practically bullying him with the lack of crit rate rolls. I also hope that we'll continue to see more of his lore in Dragonspine events, especially the ones in December. And I also hope that he'll get to interact more with his fellow captains in the Knights, because they're like my favorite group of people. I just hope that this beautiful geoflower will continue to flourish.
개각은 변화의 시작이야. 잡다한 생각은 버리고 지식을 받아들일 준비가 됐어. 나랑 같이 세계를 탐험해볼래?
That's all for today, and thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments how lucky or unlucky you've been with the Husk set, and other thoughts you might have on our lovely alchemist. I'll see you next time.